One second here. Well, good morning to my YouTube audience. One second. And we're going to be going live here in about a minute. Testing. For some reason. Good. Hey, Todd, am I coming across loud and clear? I'm going to make sure that I see you in the chat this morning. Awesome. Hey, look like we don't have a lot of people dropping in this morning for some strange reason. I'm hoping that they're not having a difficult time getting in, but we're gonna go ahead and get started this morning. It's good to see you this morning, Mom. It's good to see you, Todd. And for those of you who are over there on the Facebook page, the YouTube page, we welcome you this morning. Good morning, Genevieve. I can see you there. Go ahead and drop in your salutations this morning, your greetings, and then we're gonna jump right into this morning's presentation. I pray things are well for each of you this morning. As we step into another week, we've moved into a new month. We're in the month of March. It says March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Well, it's pretty nice weather moving into the month of March. So as we prepare to enter into this morning's teaching, right wherever you are, I want you to take a deep breath with me. And let's acknowledge the divine presence that fills this space, the infinite wisdom that guides our understanding, and the unconditional love that holds each of us. So we open our hearts to the truth, our minds to clarity, our spirits to transformation this morning as we gather in this sacred space. May we receive insight, healing, and a renewed awareness of how to live in harmony with divine law. And so it is. Ashe, amen. Good. Well, good morning, beautiful souls. Now, let's be honest. We all love to think of ourselves as non-judgmental, spiritually enlightened, open-hearted people. But then someone cuts us off in traffic, and suddenly we're spiritual judges, jurors, and the executioners all in one. You know what I'm talking about, right? What I mean is that car swerves into your lane without signaling, and instead of sending a blessing, we're out here like, oh, they have no home training, or their driver's license need to be taken. They have an honorary certificate from a cereal box, of all kinds of things. We may say, see, that's what's wrong with the world. Or go even deeper and say, Lord, deliver me from these reckless drivers. So I'm talking about judging this morning. And I'm coming from the place of we don't judge, we listen, we act, we love. So what we find ourselves doing is not just judging, but often we find ourselves indicting people and their entire existence based on one moment. And the funniest part, we never do this when we are the ones cutting people off, right? That's just an honest mistake when it comes to us. Everybody's been in a grocery store before and found themselves low-key evaluating somebody's cart. You ever walked past somebody's cart and just glance over and you just low-key judge them? You might say in your mind, oh, that processed food. No wonder they look tired. Or, oh, organic almond milk must be nice to for that bougie life. Another one you may say to yourself, you might go, Lord, these kids are screaming, maybe fewer Pop Tarts and more discipline. Just based on our observation of what's going on, what we see in the person's basket, it's so easily for us to quickly go from observing to deciding someone's worth. Or how about church judgment? You ever walked into service and immediately scanned the room? Oh, Sister So and so is here today. Haven't seen her since Easter or Mother's Day or Christmas. That's new deacon sure is enthusiastic this morning, but does he pray so loud at home? Or something like, oh, look at them lifting their hands during worship, but I saw their Facebook post this morning. These are some of the things we do. But here's the thing. Judgment doesn't just live in a grocery store. Observations. It seeps into how we see others, how we react to life, and ultimately how we block our own spiritual growth. And that's why this morning we're talking about this powerful spiritual framework. We don't judge, we listen, we act, we love. If you can resonate with where I'm going this morning, just go ahead and tap, I'm with you, I'm tracking, or yes, put something in the box this morning. Now, judgment, now we live in a day where this has been totally misconstrued. When we look at what's going on in America, when we look at some of the things that are showing up on in our social media feeds, we see on TV, we say, I'm not going to judge. But we have to be careful with that. We need to have a level of discernment. So this morning, I just felt compelled to talk about judgment that keeps us trapped in a lower state of consciousness. Let's start with judgment, because this is where most people get stuck. Now, when I say we don't judge, let's be real. Some folks misunderstand this to mean we don't think. And actually, I think some people don't think. Like we're supposed to just walk through life oblivious to letting everything just slide. Now, that's not what I mean. So let's kind of get clear this week on this whole conversation about judging. Too many people get a pass because spiritual practitioners or religious folks will tell you in a moment, don't judge. But that's not really what these scriptures are admonishing us not to do. Judgment is when we condemn, we label, or we decide someone is beyond redemption. Now, we really want to look at discernment. This is the key to really operating with proper judgment. That is, discernment is when we see reality clearly and we take wise action. And here's the danger. Judgment traps us. When we judge someone, what happens? We stop seeing them as a human being. We lock them into whatever label we've slapped on them. And when we do that, we also lock ourselves into a lower state of consciousness, and we are operating in assumptions. Give you an example. Have you ever met someone who's still mad at something that happened 20 years ago? They don't even remember what the fight was about. But they are dedicated to bitterness like it's a full-time job. That's why the sage Jesus said, judge not that you be not judged. And this scripture has gotten totally misinterpreted. He wasn't saying don't use wisdom. He was saying don't get caught in the mental prison of condemnation. Don't get caught in the middle prison of a situation that happened years ago. And in some cases, it's been rectified, but you're still operating from a position of misjudging a situation. So he's saying to us, don't get caught up in this mental prison of condemnation that comes when we're judging without discernment. Because when we do, we waste a lot of energy. We close ourselves off from love. We even close ourselves off from reconciliation. We close ourselves off from moving forward. We've closed ourselves off from really operating in forgiveness. And worst of all, we block our own ability to grow. Now, listening opens us to greater awareness and truth. Now, here's where things start to shift when you're talking about listening or when you're talking about observing. Most of us think we listen pretty well or observe quite clearly. But let's be honest. A lot of us are just waiting for our turn to talk. Many of us have already filtered this thing through what we believe it to be. And as a result of that, you have misinterpretations. You have not really heard what was being said. You listen to fortify what you already believe. The other day, I got a frequently I would get a DTM message from one of my daughters, and I thought, I mean, Dad, you're the greatest or something like that. But she was saying I was doing too much. I thought it meant like, Dad, you're the man, something like that. But she was saying you was doing too much. So I kind of chuckled because in my frame, how I wanted to see everything, I wasn't seeing it clearly. So you have to be conscious of that. Have you ever had a conversation where you realize the other person is just reloading while you're speaking? And that's talking about they're really not communicating. They're not really listening. They're waiting for their turn. Yep, I've had that experience quite often. But let me tell you why I'm wrong. They're wrong when we do that. We don't listen, we assume. And too often we react, we jump to conclusions. But here's the truth. Listening is a spiritual discipline. It's an act of presence. It requires us to put aside our personal narratives long enough to actually hear another person's truth. And when we do so, something miraculous happens. What happens is we gain insight we didn't have before. So we're talking about this morning, we don't judge, we listen, we act, we love. We're not saying that we don't discern what is going on and we don't take appropriate actions. Okay, so that's important. Actions align our will with divine presence. Okay, so not judging does not mean tolerating situations or harm. Imagine someone comes into your house and starts throwing furniture around. Judgment says this person is evil. They're a bad human being. Whereas discernment would say this person is dangerous and I need to set boundaries immediately. So you don't get caught in just judging or or forecasting what is going on with this person, but you do discern what is going on. And in this case, the person is dangerous, could be deranged, could be on drugs, could be one of your loved ones that's having a bad day. But you know that you have to do something. You have to set boundaries. Whereas some religious folks will just say that you just turn the other cheek. Some religious folks would say that you don't judge the situation. But when I look at Jesus, he didn't walk around tolerating everything in the name of love. When you look at the scriptures, you find that he often took action, like flipping out and flipping a table or calling out hypocrisy. He embodied divine wisdom. And if we're truly living in alignment with divine presence, we don't just sit back and hope for the best. We don't just sit around and observe what is someone else who is being subjected to something that is inhumane, but we step into action. And sometimes action is not actually doing something physically, but taking the high watch, not turning your head, not setting up the perpetrator as being one who is right in what they're doing. So I want you to learn to step into action when you're in the midst of a situation that calls for discernment. You want to release judgment, however, and you want to embrace wisdom. You can say something like, I see clearly, I listen deeply, I act purposely. You know, these are the things that you want to begin. You want to have something. This is something you want to have in your toolbox. Statements you can make when you're in the midst of a situation. I see clearly, I listen deeply, I act purposely. That is important. And most of all, I love fearlessly. Sometimes I think the church goes too far, or have misinterpreted what love is. They have misinterpreted what judgment is. And it's really talking about discernment. When you are observing something or responding to something or dealing with something, you want to use a level of discernment. Okay. You don't just jump in and judge. You want to discern what's really going on. Discern what action is required of me, or if not an action required of me, what statement should I be making to those who are perpetrating or those who are victimized? Not that they should just, the worst thing you could do is tell someone who feels they've been victimized, and the reality they've just been victimized. They've been put into a position that harms them, that caused harm to them, or ultimately does not mean their highest and greatest good. And to sit by and just tell them, don't judge the perpetrator, or it's going to be all right. No, I think we have to step away from that kind of religious irresponsibility. You can have an affirming affirmation like, I walk in discernment, setting boundaries with grace, and standing in my power with love. Sometimes I remember, you remember as a kid, your parent used to say, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Okay. And, I'm doing this because I love you, but we could not understand it. But they were setting boundaries and they were holding us accountable. Now, maybe that wasn't the most efficient way to do that, or the most effective way, because now that breeds a feeling of anger or contempt towards your parent. So we have to know that there's ways to discipline, ways to correct. We can do it in love without causing harm, because it sends a mixed message when you beat on me and then turn around and say you love me. Then we wonder why we have a generation of individuals who allow abuse to take place, because they are confused with the idea, or have been given the idea, that love comes with abuse. Love comes with harm. Love comes with people putting hands on them. And we get that in an early age, and it can be very confusing. So that's an aside for this morning's message. So we want to also align our hearts, minds, and action with the right expression. When we talk about do not judge, that doesn't mean you sit by complacently. That doesn't mean you allow people to do things to you or set things up that will affect you without you saying something. But you don't necessarily have to judge the person, but you discern that the actions that they're taking, or are setting up to happen, don't represent your highest and greatest good. You don't sit by and just wait that it's going to be all right in the great by and by. And so this morning, I'm just really concerned that when we are told not to judge, that oftentimes that takes our power away. Because when we operate in true love, you first of all, you got to love yourself, because you can't love you can only love others within the measure that you love yourself. And if you're not loving yourself, it's impossible truly to love someone else. And if you're loving someone else before you love yourself, you're going against the law of preservation. The first law of preservation is self-preservation, that you have to take care of yourself, make sure you're safe, make sure that your highest and greatest good is being attended to. And because you love yourself, you set boundaries, you speak clearly, and you let individuals, you communicate what your expectations are. You communicate what you're not going to accept. Now, sometimes an individual will choose to disregard what you have set as a boundary. Then there should be some consequences. If I tell you, you come up in here, you're going to get more than you bargained for, and you choose to come up in here in my home, my safe space, then you get what you got coming, whatever that may be. But don't allow those who are religious folks to say to you, you shouldn't have done that because you're supposed to turn the other cheek. You're supposed to not judge them. No, I'm not judging you, but I'm discerning that your history, I'm discerning that your presence, I'm discerning your intent does not represent my highest and greatest good. So I'm going to judge from that with this discernment properly. So we have to understand with the same measure that you judge, it'll be judged. It says the way you judge. So if you judge without discernment, you'll get judging imposed on you by individuals who are not discerning or even concerning about why you may have taken that action. So we have to be very careful in this whole conversation right now about judging not. There are some people that are doing things that we need to not have righteous indignation and judgment, but we should have discernment. We should know a fool when we see a fool. We should know a murderer when we encounter a murderer. And we know a fool and we know a murderer based on history of that person's presentation. And as if it's still consistent without any show of transformation or no longer wanting to do the things that they've done, you better discern people for who they are based on how they show up. I'm just appalled at this nation, how this nation has lost judgment or lost discernment. And because they've been lulled into this religious belief that you don't judge, as if the universe is going to correct it. But know this, you are the universe. You are the God in the earth that has been given the dictate to take care of the earth. Created in his image after his likeness, dropped in the garden, the perfect environment, and given this mandate that you are to the steward the earth. You are to steward that which is yours. And when we sit by and allow systems, organizations, individuals to present in a way that is not consistent with what you believe represents your highest and greatest good, you need to do something about it. And that's really important that you get there. We have to understand that we are discerning what is actually going on, and we're going to take right action. We step into action. Okay. So as we step into action, we are assured that we've gone through a process. And that process is I've observed, I've looked, I've seen, I have surmised based on the evidence of right here, right now. I'm not operating based on what has necessarily happened in the past. I'm not in somebody else's fight that I don't have a pony in. Got to be careful. You can get pulled into some stuff and you begin to judge when you're not using your discernment, but you're using the judgment or the filter that has been imposed on you by society. Now, this morning, I want you to affirm with me. I got a couple affirmations I want you to affirm, and I want you to choose one that you will use this week as it relates to staying present to discernment versus judgment. So here's one. I do not judge. I rise. I listen. I act. I love. And in doing so, I transform my world. Okay, so that's one good one you can use. Here's another affirmation you can use to avoid being in operating in just judgment without discernment. I align my heart, mind, and actions with the highest expression of spirit. I align my heart, mind, and actions with the highest expression of spirit. That's a good one. Another one you can use this week is I walk in discernment, setting boundaries with grace, and standing in my power with love. That's a kind of long one, but I walk in discernment. Okay. I don't operate from just sheer judgment, but I walk in discernment, set boundaries with grace, and stand in my power with love. Now that's important. I am free from resentment and open to divine truth. That's an affirmation you can make to assure or to ensure that you stay clear of old things and old grudges. That is, I am free from resentment and open to divine truth. And now here's the one that I'm going to use this week. I see clearly. I listen deeply. I act with purpose. And I love fearlessly. I see clearly. I listen deeply. I act with purpose. And I love fearlessly. Now, we started this morning with the intention of really looking at this misunderstanding or that we have as relates to what we call judgment. And we acknowledge that all of us can slip into judging quickly. But as those who are on a spiritual trajectory of transformation, we do not judge situations in and of themselves, but we use discernment as we observe what is going on around us. We don't get caught in the everyday judgment trap. Okay. So we want to learn to live in a non-judgmental, spiritually enlightened, open-hearted way. Okay. Even when someone cuts us off in traffic and suddenly we become spiritual judges, jurors, and executioners all in one, you want to breathe through it. Now they cut you off and they're moving on. But if they cut you off and slow down, and now you need to be conscious of what is about to happen. But to get yourself all caught up in a frenzy because someone is driving recklessly and needing to go into a conversation of self-talk about that person having no home training, their driver's license must have been issued through an honorary certificate program, or they found it in a cereal box. It's easy to get caught in that. And that's negative, low vibrational thinking. You always want to use judgment in alignment with discernment. And then you'll know when you need to let it go, or not just continue to process things, or not continue to go down that rabbit hole of interpreting something incorrectly because you're judging. And many times we are judging situations that have been resolved. So we have to know, is this a present day situation? Or if someone is telling you to respond to a situation a certain way, you want to ask, does me responding that way represent who I am or my highest and greatest good? So we came away this morning understanding that judgment is when we condemn, we label, or we decide someone is beyond redemption. But we also pulled in that discernment is necessary when you judge. Discernment is when we see reality clearly and take wise action. So we don't really judging in and of itself, meaning we're condemning, we're labeling, we're deciding someone is beyond redemption, perhaps. But when you add discernment to your judgment, then you're not condemning, you're not necessarily labeling, you're really getting clear on what is going on, how this person is showing up, and then you not being trapped into that. But now you're able to take the right action, which we talked about. We talked about we listen, that is, we observing this thing, and now we act. We have to always put the act in there. For many of us who have been taught that we are to love our enemies and those kinds of things, it disempowers us. It says that we shouldn't act on what the enemy may be doing, but that is so incorrect. We have to really move away from that kind of spiritual teaching. Okay, so when we are not judging, does not mean tolerating harm. We're not going to continue to tolerate. We're not going to tolerate harm or a person's intent to cause harm in our lives. So, as we prepare to wrap up this morning in this my closing affirmation prayer, I want to ask that you just simply let us seal this moment in the presence of the divine just by closing our eyes and taking a deep breath. And as I take us into this affirming prayer, that there's one power, one love, and one light that moves in and through all of life. And as we move through this thought and move into this week, may we find ourselves in a place of being sensitive to what we see, not moving in a sense of judging, but a discernment that gives us the ability to see clearly, to hear, to know what is going on, and to take the next right step, the action. And most of all, that we will be a people that is known for operating in a true love, first a love of self, a love of others. And if we love ourselves, we have the capacity to love others with boundaries. And we will not allow our boundaries to be pressed upon, infringed upon, and we will take the proper actions to protect ourselves and the boundaries we have set. And so it is. Amen. Amen. So this morning, that was just, I've just seen a lot of angry people this week, a lot of people who are disgruntled, two sides of the coin. Some have reason to be angry. You know, if you just lost your job unjustifiably, you have the right to be angry. And you don't have the right to judge that person and tell them that this too shall pass, or to say to them that that's just the way things are. What if the shoe was on the other foot? So when we do engage people, we need to be careful that we're not judging them, because oftentimes the perpetrator is being judged. I mean, not the perpetrator that's being judged, but it's the victim, is being judged when are justifiable in whatever action they're taking or position they may be in at that time. So we're going to move into the green room. For those of you who have joined us and you have found this teaching to be insightful, enlightening, and you want to share a little bit, come on over with us to the green room. And if you're dropping off, I encourage you to join me Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. for our morning meditations. And then on Tuesday nights, we do a deeper dive. So this Tuesday, I'm going to continue on in the 4th chapter of the book. So I wanted to kind of switch it up this morning for those individuals who are joining us, being more sensitive to what I believe in the issue at hand. And that issue has to do with the discernment of how to judge and how to use discernment when you're in a situation and not just using judgment. Judgment is solely tied to the sensory realm. But when you use the discernment, you also are pulling in the spiritual essence of who you are, and you make right actions accordingly. That's important. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I see those of you who are in the chat. I welcome all of you. If you have a question, comment, or something you want to share, just go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see any comments in the feed this morning. Rachel says, great teaching. Today's teaching is just what the divine doctor has ordered for me. Well, prescription filled. So I would hope you will take that this week and you will meditate on one of those affirmations that maybe you've been non-judging, or you've been using that scripture incorrectly. You allowed people to have a pass. No longer, you have to let them know, no longer am I giving you a pass. Stop letting people walk over you, walk on you, walk through you, abuse you. Okay. There's no love in abuse. There's no love if there's hurt and if there's pain. And if you're getting that type of love, you want to bring it to set the boundary and tell the person that doesn't feel good to me. That doesn't appear to represent my highest and greatest good. And I will no longer tolerate it. And sometimes you don't have to tell them you're not going to tolerate it. You just don't tolerate it and do what you need to do. That's important. Awesome. Good. Thank you, Rachel. Let me look over here in the YouTube channel, see if we have any comments or anything over there being said. All right. Good morning. I see you, King T. We can judge ourselves in a negative way. That's right, because we're not using discernment. So we have to be careful how we judge ourselves. Anytime you're using judgment, don't just let it be based on an emotional response, or don't let it just be based on irrational filters, but you want to judge a situation with discernment. Got to bring discernment into the equation. Okay. This is the problem with our society today. We're not judging. Okay, people can do any and everything and all things. Now, people can do what they want to do, what they desire to do, but it does not have to be part of my world. I can choose not to be where those types of things are taking place, even though it's okay in society at large. But I don't allow those, I don't go those places where I have to be subjected to that. I don't allow myself to be in the midst of things that does not serve my highest and greatest good. Even people have, they can choose whatever lifestyle they want to live. I may engage them in love, not judging them, but I have discerned that this is not consistent with my belief system. But at this point in time, at this intersection with them, I'm operating in love so we can get the job done. Okay, if we're put together on a work assignment and your belief system is totally different than mine, or you're doing some wayward things, I can discern that I need to set some boundaries. I can discern that I must be careful with interaction with this person. I even interact with them, but at the same time, I have come away with a judgment that this person does not represent my highest and greatest good. It doesn't say they're good, doesn't say they're bad. It's just, it doesn't align with what I believe to be true and right for me. So that's important. Carolyn says, I see with eyes of spirit. There are no obstacles on my pathway. I see clearly the perfect plan. That's Florence Scovel Shin. You're right. Awesome. Yeah. So that's important, that we see clearly. Many of us are not seeing clearly, but we want to get over to that now, and not having impaired vision. And impaired vision because of poor judgment. Poor judgment is when you don't use discernment. Okay. We've operated in poor judgment that has gotten us in the predicament we are in a country. Hindsight is always 2020, but hopefully we will learn through the things that we're going through at this present moment. All right, well, I'm about at the end of my presentation this morning. unless they're, Todd says this great timely lesson. Thanks for the practical tool and separating judgment from discernment. And the separation was put there so that we can see that many times we judge without discernment. The separation was put there. So now that we can have a 1-2 punch, when we are judging something, we want to ask, am I applying discernment to this situation also? That is really key. The example, you get an email. If you just run with judgment just from reading it and you fly off the handle in a response versus taking a breath before you respond to it and discern what is going on. And sometimes you can discern with asking for clarity. When someone sends you something or says something to you, that automatically you can judge it in the wrong, it's being filtered improperly, then you ask a clarifying question to see if this is what they really meant, if this is really what they're going to do, or if what they have done was done with intention to cause hurt or harm to you. Because sometimes people do things and not realizing that it impacts you. So you got to ask sometimes if a person is close to you, someone you care about, someone you're going to see all the time, you want to get clarity on, this is just what happened. This is how I'm discerning that. Am I discerning that properly? And if they bold and bad enough to say, yes, I meant to do that to you, then you have to protect yourself. You may say, okay, good. I'm glad to know that. There's no need for us to continue on. So you have to discern what's the next right thing to do. Does that make sense to everyone? Did you get something out of this morning that you can take away and begin to put into application? Go ahead and if you did, go ahead and drop it in here that you did. Awesome. Great. Definitely. Well, that's all I have. I'll see you on Monday morning, tomorrow at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. In addition to that, perhaps I may see you on Tuesday night. Now, I did forget. I am facilitating a free seminar or webinar on the 10th of March, and it has to do with 20 things that you probably didn't know that you should know about using what we call large language models, or it's often referred as AI, but it's a large language model. There's different types of AI, but we're talking about if you're using ChatGPT, if you're using Jenny, or you're using Claude, or you're using any one of those large language models, generative models that you can interact with, you want to come out to this presentation. If you're not using them, I highly recommend that you become familiar with them. And there's many ways in which you can use it to improve your life. Don't get stuck behind the curve. Matter of fact, don't even get left behind. So that's a free webinar that I got coming up. In addition, many of you received a survey. Now, I would like to see you respond to the survey. I can see that many of you have opened it, but chose not to answer. It's only a 2-minute survey. What do you get from it? Well, if you answer the survey, there is a document that I'm going to send you to help you if you're using one of those large language models such as ChatGPT. Now, answering the survey helps me because one of the things I'm dealing with at this present moment is really wanting to address the issue of AI illiteracy amongst people of color, because I find that we don't use technology oftentimes in the most efficient way, and we're using it sometimes at the lowest way that it can be used, whereas there's so many things that you can do with AI. And now, if you are not aware of this, AI will impact the employment situation of a lot of individuals, and most likely those who are ignorant of how to utilize it. Your employers are now going to be requiring that you have a level of competency because they're integrating AI into their systems. And so I just want to be on the front side of that. So I encourage you to do two things. One, to register for the upcoming seminar so you can understand in a very practical way what AI is. And two, I would like you to complete the simple 7-question survey, 9-question survey. That helps me to make sure that I'm presenting something that's pertinent to you. So that's all I have. So circle back this morning, look for that survey and answer that survey. Good morning, Tawanda. I saw your hand and I hope you're still with me. You have the mic. You just have to unmute yourself. Let me see if Tawanda is still with us. I believe you are. Tawanda, if you are, just go ahead and unmute yourself. And then we'll go from there. And while I'm waiting on Tawanda to figure that out, let me see if there's anything else here in the room. There's nothing else. All right, Tawanda, you have, I've given you, okay, unmute yourself. I've given you that. And good. So maybe she dropped out the room. All right. So you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you on tomorrow morning for those who are joining me for morning meditations. Otherwise, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.